In today's tutorial, I'll use Inkscape to show you how to create a very simple vector style soda can similar to what you see here on my screen. And at any point in this tutorial, you could look down at the bottom left hand side of my screen to see which keystrokes and mouse clicks I'm using. So let's close that out and let's get started. So the first thing we'll do in Inkscape is we'll open up our Align and Distribute Objects menu by clicking that button. Make sure you have Last Selected chosen from that drop down list, and then we'll come over here to this icon that says Edit Objects, Colors, Gradients, and Stroke, and we'll open that menu up. And then we're going to grab our Circles and Ellipses tool, we're going to click on that, and we're going to create an ellipse on the page, kind of like that. And we're going to turn this black, and we're going to come over to the opacity slider, and we're going to drop that in half. Now let's go back over to the arrow and click on that. And let's take this and bring this towards the bottom portion of the screen. Then we can right click this and go to duplicate. And while holding Control on the keyboard, click and drag this duplicated copy straight up to about there. And then what we'll do next is we're going to turn on our snap to paths button right here. It's a little green squiggly line. We can turn that on. And then we can take our Bezier pen. We're going to use that tool. And then we're going to zoom in over this left-hand side right here. I'm just going to hold Control on the keyboard and use the mouse wheel to zoom in. And I'm going to take the cursor and I'm going to snap it on the very far left edge of this ellipse right here. And once it snaps onto there, click it once, and then hold Control and drag this line straight over. I'm going to press down on the center mouse wheel to scroll the page over so I can see this side. And I'm going to hold Control and drag this line straight over to the right side. And once it snaps onto the right side, I'm going to click. And then I'm going to take the mouse wheel, I'm going to press down to pan the page up. And then hold Control again to get this line going straight up and down. And drag it up until it snaps onto that side. And once it snaps, go ahead and click. And then while still holding Control, drag this line straight across to here. Click there. And clicking the mouse wheel again, I'm just panning the page down to bring this line back down to the starting point. And I'll connect it. Once that box highlights, you'll know it's connected. Connect it back together and click so it creates that shape. We could press 1 on the keyboard to zoom to 100%. And as you can see, we've created this little rectangle. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that red, and I'm going to take the opacity on that and drop that in half. And then I'm going to go to Stroke Paint and click on that. I'm going to click the X button to turn the stroke off on that. And then I'm going to go back to the arrow. And let's go and turn this Snap to Paths button off. Let's turn that off. And let's take this oval right here. And let's right click that and go to Duplicate. And let's hold Control and click and drag this up to about here. And then we can hold Control on the keyboard and grab this top arrow and click and drag this down to about there. And then we can take this oval down here, we can right click this and go to duplicate. We could turn that blue, and we could hold Control and click and drag this down to about here. And then we could hold Control and grab this top arrow and scale this down about that much. I'm actually going to hold Control and move this up a little bit and drop that to the bottom. That's going to make the bottom of the can. So the next thing I'm going to do is let's go to the magnifying glass and let's zoom in over this top portion up here. And then let's take the Bezier pen and we'll turn our Snap to Paths back on and connect the cursor, snap the cursor onto the side, to the upper left side of this oval right here. Right about here, I'd say. Click and then hold Control and drag this straight across to here until it snaps. And click. And then bring this up to about here until it snaps, and then click, and then hold Control and bring this straight across. And once it snaps onto there, click, and then connect it back to the starting point. So then we end up with that shape. And I'm going to turn that red. I'm going to bring the opacity on that down to about halfway. And then I'm going to turn the Stroke Paint off with the X button. And then I'm going to click that arrow, and let's press 1 on the keyboard to zoom back out to see where we're at here. So this is what we have so far. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click this black oval down here, and I'm going to duplicate this again. Right click and go to duplicate and hold Control and drag this thing straight up to about here. Right about there. And then I'm going to hold Control. I'm going to scale this in. I'm going to grab this arrow and scale this into about right about there. This is going to be the rim of the can. I'm actually going to turn that blue so we can differentiate that. And I'm going to hold Control and use the mouse wheel to zoom in. Or you could just take the magnifying glass and click and drag over it. That's another way to zoom in. Let's go to the arrow now. And I'm going to right click this and go to duplicate. I'm going to turn that green and then hold Control and Shift and click and drag this in to about here. And then I'm going to right click this and duplicate this one and turn that red and hold Control and Shift and scale this in to about here. And then while holding Control, I'm going to grab this top arrow and I'm going to scale this down to about there. And then I'm going to hold Shift and click on that green oval so we have them both selected, and hold Control and bring this up to about right about there. And then you press 1 on the keyboard to zoom out to see where we're at. We can click off of the graphic to deselect everything. And then what we can do is we can take this black oval, let's right click this and go to duplicate, and let's bring that copy off to the side. We're going to use that again in a minute. And then let's click on this first black oval and then hold Shift and click on the red rectangle in the middle, and let's unify them together with Path Union. And then let's zoom in. With that selected, hold Shift and click on this black oval beneath it, and let's go to Path Union. And then hold Shift and click on this red shape that we drew and go to Path Union. And then we can press 1 to zoom out to see that we have everything as one unified shape now. And what we can do now is we can take this unified shape, we can bring the opacity of that all the way up, and we can make that a light shade of gray, maybe 20% gray. We'll do that. And then we'll take this blue circle and let's bring the opacity on that up, and let's make this maybe 40% gray. And then we can click off of that to deselect. Now let's take this black oval right there. Let's click on that and let's press delete on the keyboard to get rid of that. We don't really need that anymore. And then I'm going to click on this blue oval up here. I'm going to bring the opacity on that all the way up. And I'm going to press F7 to bring up the dropper. And I'm going to click on this gray area to give that the same shade of gray. But I'm going to go over to the Fill tab. And I'm going to go to the L column under the HSL tab. And I'm going to slide this over to the right to make that a little lighter. We want that to be a little lighter. And actually, let's go to the magnifying glass and zoom in on this a little bit. I'm going to go back to the arrow. I'm going to click on this red circle. I'm just going to make this a little bigger. I made this a little too small. Ideally, you want it to be about that big. And then I'm going to hold Shift and click on the green oval and make this a little bit bigger as well. This is just supposed to be the rim of the can right here. So ideally, you want it about that size. And then I'm going to click on this red oval in the center. Let's bring the opacity on that all the way up and press F7 on the keyboard to get the dropper tool. And let's make that the same shade that the rim of the can is. And then I'll go back to the arrow and then I'll click on the green oval in the background. Let's bring the opacity on that all the way up and then press F7 to bring up the dropper again. And then I'm going to make this the same shade as that right there. Maybe make that a little darker. And then press 1 on the keyboard to zoom out. And then I'll go back to the arrow. And then I'm going to click on this oval. I'm just going to bring this over here. I'm going to press Shift on the keyboard and click on this shape to center it up. And I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. We want this oval positioned right about here, right up near the top so that it's overlapping a little bit. And then we're going to take the Bezier pen and we're going to start our line right about here. Actually, let's come up here and turn this snap to paths off. We don't need that. And let's bring the line, zoom out, let's bring the line going around the entire graphic like this, and then back through this point where it's overlapping, and connect that all together like that. And then we can go to our arrow tool and hold Shift on the keyboard and click on the black oval, and let's unify them together by going to Path Union. And then we can press 1 on the keyboard to zoom out. And then I'm going to press this gray shape in the center here, and I'm going to right click this and go to duplicate, and then hold Shift on the keyboard and click on that black shape we just drew, and let's go to Path Intersection. And then we can lower that, lower selection 1 step. We can lower it once, twice, a third time, and then it should be below the rim of the can. That's about where we want it. And I'm going to bring the opacity on that all the way up, and I'm going to make that a lighter shade of red, maybe kind of like that. Okay, and the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to take this gray shape right here. I'm going to right click this and go to duplicate, and then I'm going to turn that blue, and then I'm going to bring the opacity on that in half. And then I'm going to take this top oval over here, the large oval over here that's supposed to be the rim of the can, right click that and go to duplicate, and then hold shift and click on that blue shape and go to path difference, so we have something like that. And then I'm going to go to path and linked offset, and then I'm going to hold control and grab this node and scale this down to about that much. And then once you get it to about there, we can go to path, object to path, and then we can go back to our arrow, and let's click on this blue shape underneath it, the original one, and let's press delete on the keyboard to get rid of that. What we can do next is we're going to create a circle. So come over here to the Create Circles button and hold Control and Shift on the keyboard to create a nice perfectly round circle, kind of like that. And we can bring the opacity on that all the way up and grab the arrow, and let's put this over here, right about here. And we could hold Shift on the keyboard and click on the can, center that up on the vertical axis so that it's centered. And let's click off of that to deselect everything. Now let's take this blue circle and let's turn this white. And then we'll right click this and go to duplicate, and we'll press F7 on the keyboard to bring up the dropper, and we'll make that circle the same shade of red that this is up here by clicking on that. And then we can go back to our arrow, and then you can hold Control and Shift and scale this in about that much, and then we can right click this and go to duplicate and bring this over here, and then we can right click this and go to duplicate again. We can turn that blue, and then we can hold Control and scale this down to about there, and then take this top arrow and scale that up to about there, and then hold Shift on the keyboard and click on that red circle underneath it and go to path difference, and then we can turn that green, and let's hold Control and Shift on the keyboard and make this thing a bit bigger, and then click this a second time to get the rotation handles, and let's rotate this thing around to about there, and we'll bring the opacity on that in half. And let's bring this over here on top of this red circle. Maybe about that much. I'm actually going to scale this down a little bit. About that much. And then we can hold Shift and click on that red circle and go to Path, Difference. And then we can go to Path, Break Apart. And click off of it to deselect everything. Now let's click on just this bottom part right here. And let's go down to our color picker. And let's give this a nice shade of blue. Maybe something like that. And then we can take this blue piece up top and we can raise this to the very top by clicking this button, raise selection to the top. And let's go and draw a rectangle with the rectangle tool. And let's make this rectangle going sort of like this. Not exactly in the middle. You want it to be a little off center. I'm actually, if the my corners are rounded here, if your corners are rounded on the rectangle, you can just click this button up here. Make the corners sharp. That's a nice little trick to do that. And then we can go back to our arrow. And I'm just going to adjust the width and the size of this thing. I'm going to make it so that it's coming out this far to the left and about this far to the right. And then I'm going to hold Shift on the keyboard and click on that blue shape beneath it and go to Path, Difference. And then we can come down here to our color picker. And I'm going to choose white for that one. So as you can see, it's kind of like a gloss effect. I might even bring the opacity down a little bit. Maybe about that much works. And then click. Let's take this oval up here, the rim of the can, and let's go to Path. Actually, you know what? First, let's take this white gloss that we just created and go to Path, Break Apart, so that it's two different pieces, and then we'll click on this oval and go to Path, Linked Offset, and then hold Control and click and drag this node up here until it goes out to about there, and then we'll go to Path, Object to Path, and then we'll go back to our arrow and we'll raise this to the very top, and then hold Shift and click on this white piece on the right here, and let's go to Path, Difference. So then we end up with something like that. And the very last thing to do here is to create the little tab on top of this that creates, that actually opens the can. So I'm just going to come off to the side over here to create this. I'm going to go to the rectangles tool, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle. It's coming out white. We could just turn that blue. Go back to the arrow and play with the shape of it. About that big is about this wide by that high. You want it to be taller than it is wide. So then we'll go back to the rectangles tool, and we're going to grab this circle node up here. We're going to give this a rounded edge, kind of like that. Maybe about that much. And then we'll go to Path, Object to Path, and we'll go back to our arrow. We'll right click this and go to Duplicate and hold Control and grab this, bring this up to the side over here, and then hold Control and click and drag this down. This one's going to be a little smaller. And then we could take our rectangle tool and we could draw another rectangle going over this. And let's make this one blue so we can differentiate it. And we'll go back to our arrow. We'll lower this to the bottom and then hold Shift and click on this other red square right here. And we're just going to center that up on the horizontal axis. So let's click off of that to deselect everything and click on just this blue shape. And let's hold Control and bring this over about that much, so that the space, the padding going around this is equal. The padding between here and here should be about equal to here. And we want to have extra padding on the left side over here. So then we're going to go to our Edit Paths by Nodes button. And we can't edit this by nodes yet because Inkscape is still recognizing this as a square or rectangle as opposed to a vector object. So we're going to go to Path, Object to Path. And then I'm going to click and drag over these two left nodes and hold Control and click and drag these down to about here. And then I'm going to take these two bottom nodes and I'm going to click and drag them up to about here. And I'd say that's good enough. And we can go back to our arrow. And let's click on this red rectangle and then hold Shift and click on this other red rectangle and go to Path, Union. And then we can hold Shift on the keyboard and click on the blue shape beneath it and go to Path, Difference. Now what we can do is we can click this a second time to get our rotation handles, and we can rotate this thing around so it's kind of like that. And then we can click it another time to get back to our scaling handles. And I'm just going to grab this bottom arrow right here and click and drag this up to about here so that it looks like it's on an angle. And then I'll right click this and go to Duplicate. I'll turn that red. We'll go to Path, Break Apart, and Path, Union. And then hold Control and click and drag this down to about here. About that much. Let's go to our magnifying glass and zoom in on this side right here. We're going to take our Bezier pen and then we're going to go to Snap to Paths. We're going to turn that back on and connect it to the left side of this red shape and then click and then bring it up to the side of this blue shape and then click that onto there. I'm just going to bring this line all the way through here. Again, you could press down on the mouse wheel to pan the page like I'm doing, or if you're using Inkscape version 91, you could press the space bar and move the cursor, which will allow you to pan around in the page. And I'm going to connect this line to the right side, and then click, and bring the line down to connect to this side, and then click, and then just bring this line all the way back to the beginning, and connect it to the beginning like that. And then I'll go to the arrow and click on that and hold Shift on the keyboard and click on the red shape on the bottom and go to Path, Union. Now let's press 1 on the keyboard to zoom out and see what we did. As you can see, that's what we've done. Let's turn the Snap to Paths off and let's lower that selection one step so that the blue shape is on top. And let's click and drag over both of them and bring the opacity all the way up. And then we're going to take this. Let's raise this to the top with them both selected. We'll go to Raise to the Top and we'll bring this over here. Position it to about where this little tab would be. You could press Control on the keyboard to scale this down. We'll scale this down about that much. And then I'm going to zoom in on that. And then I'm going to click off of it to deselect everything. I'm going to click on this blue part of the tab right here. And then I'm going to press F7 on the keyboard to bring up the dropper. And then I'm going to click on this gray, this light gray part. I'm just going to make that a little whiter, a little lighter, maybe even white. And then go back to the arrow and click on this red part and press F7 to bring up the dropper again, and I'm going to give this a dark gray, kind of like that. And then we can press 1 on the keyboard to zoom out. And as you can see, we're finished. We've created a very simple vector soda can using Inkscape. And if you have any questions, or if I missed any steps in this tutorial, just let me know in the comments section and I will gladly help you out. As always, thank you for watching.